A good Thursday morning, everybody, and welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I am Eric Kane. Along with me today is Rob Lewis, Matt Ray. Brent Hobbs going to join us here in just a second for a little bit to set the scene from Cincinnati. Of course, it's the NCAA hearing with the University of Tennessee, former head coach Jeremy Pruitt, Don DePlowman, Philip Fulmer, you name it, the who's up there in Cincinnati this week. So going to get a little bit out of the way first, but remember, Exterior Home Solutions, the proud sponsor of this podcast. For a free estimate, go ahead and give them a call today, 865-524-5888. Really appreciate it. Exterior Home Solutions. Check them out online as well, exteriorhomesolutions.com. Before we get into Cincinnati and before we get into the mailbag, Rob Lewis, big day for Tennessee basketball yesterday. Big news, Santiago Vescovi is coming back. He announced that earlier this week, I should say, and picked up the first commit via the transfer portal.
Yeah, some news finally. I mean, that the Vescovi decision, along with Josiah, and I think to a lesser degree Julian Phillips, it's been out lingering since even before the season ended. People want to know, what would they do since they had the opportunity, and I think Santiago was the one guy of the three. I don't think it's any secret that a lot of people have been saying was leaning towards coming back, and Tennessee was able to make that happen. I think NIL, not be naive, was certainly a part of it, and Spire helped step up and make that a reality. As for Jordan Gainey, I mean, I think after the Tyreek Key season, I think everybody's going to take a wait and see approach on getting a sweet shooting, mid-major guard. But man, if you just look at the stats from Gainey, I mean, as a freshman, the kid, legit made half his shots from 3-point range. 74 out of 150. I mean, that's an outlier stat. I mean, you don't see that very often. So at the very least, I think you have to just take it at face value that the kid can stroke the basketball. This is the team they were. I think the number, I looked it up yesterday, I think they were 247th in the country in 3-point shooting last year. So, it kind of goes without saying that adding some shooting was a priority. And now, obviously, Jordan's got to get bigger. He's got to get stronger. At 6'4", he's 175 pounds. So, that's going to be a challenge for him in the SEC. And he knows that. He's got, told me that himself, that he's going to use it for the summer. But, bottom line, big day for Tennessee basketball with the Vescovi news. That's an all SEC caliber player that you get back, a super veteran. And it's, really hard to overstate just what that means, especially when you don't know what you're going to get from Zakai early in the year.
Hey, Rob, what do the numbers look like right now? Know that obviously Julian Phillips, NBA decision and all that, but kind of where are the numbers with Vescovi coming back, getting one guy out of the portal?
Yeah, that's a great question because Grant Ramey and I are obviously terrible at math because we were texting back and forth with each other yesterday and came up with the wrong answer. So it's assuming I'm counting Urosh is gone right now, and if we keep Josiah and Julian Phillips on the roster as of now, I don't think that's going to be happening. But neither one has said anything, so leave them on there as of today with the Gainey addition with Vescovi 14. So I would say. I would think Josiah and Julian will move on. That could change, especially with Josiah. I think both of those guys are leaving, so I think you're realistically going to be at 12, and you can add one more without having to juggle anything.
Big news for Tennessee basketball earlier this week, and NCAA hearing going on between the university, former coaches, administration, all that going on at Cincinnati as the week goes on. Brent Hobbs joining us from the hallway in some hotel in Cincinnati. Have you gone mad yet, Brent?
No, not yet. I am at the Westin Hotel in downtown Cincinnati, beautiful Cincinnati. It's a great weather day that I've not seen anything outside, but it's an educational experience for me. I've never attended one of these, and I've never been a part to kind of see what all goes on and how this works. It's not a trial. It's not a jury. There's not a judge. It's basically tables set up in a square, and everybody who's involved is sitting around that square and they're talking about it. The Committee on Infractions, there's a 7-member panel who are here to hear this case. The Enforcement Committee presents their case in the basically opening arguments, if you want to keep it in legal terms. And after those are verbally handed out, they're given out, which is basically the letter of infractions Tennessee got back in July. Then the the discussion starts and the questioning starts. And so supposed to last 3 days. We'll see if it actually goes that long, but all the key parties are here. The biggest note in terms of everybody that's here is the fact that the SEC commissioner's here. And I think it's noteworthy that Greg Sankey is here. He's here on behalf and as a part of the Tennessee contingent. He has had lunch with them. He's been in their meeting rooms, their own private meeting room, and he's obviously sat in on all of the hearing part as well. So to me, that's noteworthy because I think he's the most powerful man in sports. He's the only guy in the room, in my opinion, Eric, who can pick up the phone and call the new president of the NCAA, and the president's going to answer the phone. I don't know that the committee members are going to get him on the phone, but Greg Sankey can get him on the phone. And it's pretty clear Greg Sankey's backing the University of Tennessee. Not that they shouldn't be penalized, but to ensure that there's not any kind of harsh penalties towards Tennessee in any way at this point.
So you've already kind of laid out what's been going on in day one, and this will evolve as the week goes on. But what, to your knowledge, should we expect from day two and potentially day three the rest of this week?
Well, I mean, much of the level one allegations have already been resolved because Brian Niedermeyer took a deal. The other three, including Selden, took a deal. So they've got to work through the level one violation against Derek Ansley. Derek Ansley's not here. He can do via Zoom should he choose. There's no subpoena power. They can't make him come here. So we'll see if Derek Ansley participates in any way, shape, or form. We won't know that, but we'll try to see if we can hear rumblings of that. And then the two biggest contentions at this point is the failure to promote compliance by Jeremy Pruitt, the charge at the level one against him, but then obviously the failure to monitor charge against Tennessee. And those are the two biggest pieces of the puzzle. Philip Fulmer's here going to be asked a bunch of questions for both of those charges because he was the AD in charge at that point, and Jeremy Pruitt works for him, and both the university and Jeremy Pruitt have charges against him, so he's important. Donde Plowman obviously will be asked a lot of questions. Danny White's more of a spectator at this point. He was not here for any of those things. So once you get through the reading of the charges and you start asking the questions, I think they're going to spend a lot of time on questions for Jeremy Pruitt and obviously some questions for Tennessee on the failure to monitor charge because that's Tennessee's hang up in this. The rest of it, Tennessee, I think, is pretty okay with everything, but that's the one charge that Tennessee has contested from the moment they got that last.
Brent, we appreciate it. You got plenty of stuff over at Volquest.com and on the General's Quarters. Anything else here from day one as we get ready for day two of this hearing for Tennessee and the NCAA?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, that just a reminder that there is no timetable in terms of, this thing could end Thursday, it could go to all day Friday. It can, they could wrap it up sooner rather than later. You never know. And the other thing, too, is we're not going to learn a lot coming out of this because there's gag orders against everybody. So I don't know that you're going to get any kind of formal statement from anybody anywhere. And you're probably looking at June at the earliest before you get any kind of ruling by the committee on infractions here coming out of the hearing. And at that point, Tennessee could appeal if they felt the need to appeal something. Or maybe, and what Tennessee hopes is that this case is finally put to bed and everybody's moving forward.
Before we let you go, share that funny note you dropped on the GQ yesterday about Tennessee having lunch and snacks being out and just some randos walking by.
This thing is that it's on the floor where all the ballrooms are. There are multiple ballrooms and there are multiple conventions and things going on. So ironically, there is a excellence in coaching convention going on next door to where Tennessee's. You can't make this stuff up, right?
Is Pruitt speaking, Hummer? Is he killing two birds with one stone?
I don't think he's the keynote. So they played Danger Zone as their intro. The old Kenny Loggins Danger Zone song for whatever gets them going. And it's one of those. It's noisy. There's a lot of little celebration and chanting and cheering and different stuff. I don't know how you describe it, but it feels like it's an infomercial. Then they're trying to sell something. So anyway, there's a bunch of people are milling around here. They've obviously got it roped off where Tennessee is having the hearing. But then Jeremy Pruitt and his legal team have a separate room in this lobby area, and Tennessee has a separate room. And so Tennessee had a lunch set up with sandwiches and different things outside their room. It was not in their boardroom. It was outside their room. So they're all in there eating, and there's just some random people walk by and they go, "Hey, cookies." And they just grab cookies. They just started eating off of Tennessee's lunch table. So it's pretty funny that they were just, "Hey, we'll go back to the danger zone in a few minutes, but let's get a couple of cookies before we go back to learn about the excellence in coaching seminar that's taking place here." So that's the comedy highlight when you hang out too many hours in a lobby of a hotel, which apparently I'm going to be doing here for the next little bit for sure.
Living their best life. Hopefully Brent Hobbs will live through this experience and be back with us at the end of this week. Brent, we appreciate it, and follow all of his coverage all week long with the NCAA hearing over at Volquest.com. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff there. Rod, that was a good drop there about Jeremy Pruitt, if he was going to be killing two birds with one stone, because it's just funny how things work out sometimes, isn't it?
Can't make it up.
Can't make it up. All right, without further ado, let's get into the mailbag questions. A lot of recruiting questions. We'll start with Bassmaster Vol. Matt Ray, this is for you. Where do we stand with Mike Matthews and Williams? And tell me how to say his last name, the defensive lineman.
Waneri.
Okay, that guy and Mike Matthews. Where's Tennessee with those two?
Don't take that as the correct way to say it. That's how I say it.
That's what we're going with right now.
I'm pretty sure it's the correct way to say it. He told me that's how you say it. So, anyways, we'll start with Mike Matthews. I think things have kind of been quiet on the Mike Matthews front since he took some visits earlier this month. But, as we've alluded to in the war room, Tennessee's been in a good position with Mike Matthews for a little while. That doesn't mean that this thing's close to being over, that there's not work to do. He's going to see at least, 4 or 5 programs on an official visit, and he doesn't have any of those set up except USC right now. He's keeping that pretty close to his vest, but he likes Tennessee. Feels like a priority for the Vols, and he sees the way they can use him in this offense. Now, for Mike Matthews, he's a guy that right now today I feel like is probably going to leave the state of Georgia. What's that look like at the end of May? We'll see. Georgia's not going to quit because I think that he's leaving the state of Georgia. So it's a big boy recruitment. There's going to be some twists and turns in it, but Tennessee's going to get him back for an official visit is my expectation there. And the Vols are a real long-term player for Mike Matthews. With Williams Waneri, it felt like Tennessee made a good initial impression with him when he made it across country in January. Getting him back to end out last month was big because it feels like Tennessee's built some momentum in that recruitment and now have some staying power. He set an official visit date with the Vols, so he'll be back out here at some point, most likely June. I'm not sure the actual date on that, but Oklahoma has paced the way there for a while, and Brent Venables' program's done a good job. But Tennessee has some momentum, and they're a real threat to be one of those schools that can pull them out of the Midwest. Again, I know you guys probably on general quarters getting tired of hearing us say it, but a big boy battle. So there's twists and turns, and these kids are, getting the best pitches and, all the opportunities thrown at them. But Williams Waneri likes what he's heard from Tennessee. He likes the opportunity at Tennessee, and the Vols are a player in that one long term, in my opinion.
Let's go to Nashville 615. There will be odd men out at running back. Good problem to have, but realistically, only 2 of the 5 running backs are going to get 80% of the carries. Who are your favorites, Rob? I would say the favorites are the 2 veterans, and Jalen Wright probably leading that group in my opinion, and Jabari Small, but some others will see some action, but I would stick with those 2, wouldn't you?
I would too, but golly, you have to love what you saw from Dylan Sampson, last year. He's a home run hitter in the way that the other 2 guys are not, in my opinion. And I didn't, because of basketball, wrap it up, I didn't see as much spring practice as you did, Eric, but I'm buying Cam Selden stock. I'm not saying that he's going to get 10 carries a game next year, but I'll be really surprised if he doesn't have some kind of a little, role or, I guess a package in this offense. He's just his skill set is just too multifaceted, I think. And physically, he looks like he's ready.
He's different than the other guys in that room right now. And when Khalifa Keith gets here, he's even different from the other guys in that room too. You can say the same thing about both those guys, but I'm with you, Rob. I think Cam Selden, as long as he stays healthy, continues to gain the information and learn this offense and feels more comfortable playing running back, which is what he said after the Orange and White game, that I think there'll be, maybe a small role, or he'll see the field at some point in time for sure. Buzz on McCallan Castles, the tight end. Will he be able to significantly make an impact? He was, and also is he an NFL prospect? Rob, correct me if I'm wrong here, but hey, if he's healthy, he's playing because Tennessee's got to have at least 2 tight ends. Ethan Davis had a really good spring, but of course has a little bit of a setback with that collarbone right now. McCallum Castles came to Tennessee because he wants to go to the NFL. He wants to play with the best of the best. He's got the size and the frame. We'll see what he does this year, but Rob, if he's healthy, he's playing.
Well, there's no question. I mean, the NFL stuff, I think everybody would like to see him play, on Saturdays in the SEC first. But physically, I mean, he looks the part, and absolutely. I mean, if he goes down, Mack could probably play. He gets snaps at tight end. I mean, they're incredibly thin, and it's, as we've seen, it's an incredibly important position in this offense. I mean, it's a very big deal, and they just don't have numbers.
Couple more here from Nashville, 615. Matt, Kamarion Franklin is rated lower at On 3, but is a 5-star or close everywhere else. Describe his game and his ranking.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as getting into the ranking, I like what Charles does in terms of his evaluation. I think he's out ahead of the curve on a lot of guys. Kamarion Franklin is a guy that I see, more potential for than what his ranking suggests right now. He had a massive junior season there at Lake Cormorant. Just a guy that can beat you with power and finesse at the prep level. He's continued to add some good weight this spring. He was, had added a lot of definition from the time we saw him in January till now. So he's got plenty of room to add to his frame, and that's something he'll have to continue to do as he gets into college. But a guy that can do a lot of things. He's super athletic, has a basketball background. Now, he's not going to play, he's not a Division I basketball player or anything, but he's athletic. He plays valuable minutes there. So I think that's the first thing when you turn on the tape for him is just the size, the frame, and just how athletic he is. Overall, he's a guy that Tennessee's done a really good job with here of late.
ATL VFL wants to know odds that Tennessee loses either Warren Burrell or Kamal Hadden to the portal. Right now, I would say those odds are slim. Kamal Hadden had a good spring. He was repping with the ones, and so it would appear that he's in good standing right now. Warren Burrell, of course, wasn't full go completely this spring, had that red jersey on, didn't take part in the orange-white game, but he got a lot of work in. But as of right now, there's no chatter about him as well, talking about a multi-year starter. But, of course, things are different now. You got to get better play in the secondary. But things can change. This portal window is open until April the 30th, so we'll see. But as of right now, I would say that those two are slim to none in terms of leaving. Let's go to Gator Dog. What position could be a strength for this team? Rob, is it offensive line, the Leo position, or the secondary?
So which? I guess he's asking which of the 3 question marks could turn out to be a strength.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if any of those 3 turn out to be a strength for Tennessee, that would be a fantastic development. I mean, I don't know that right now. Would you? I don't think any of those are going to be a strength. I think you kind of hope that they're okay.
Yeah,
and I'm not pushing the. I mean, I think they can be good on the offensive line. There's just a couple of positions that are unsettled. And you've got guys that have played some football for the most part. And Edge asked me in a year because, man, you talk about the Leo. I mean, a year from now, and maybe Pierce, maybe Joseph, maybe those guys make big strides and are big time as sophomores. But I want to see what that position looks like in 2024 with Caleb Herring, with Pierce, with Joseph. I think that. I mean, I think there's a ton of talent right there, young talent. But I don't know that you can just assume they're going to make that jump. And in the secondary, I don't. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, they have a lot of bodies back there. I mean, and I do think they're better. And you've got to love some of the young talent. Like Slaughter, like Jordan Matthews. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to think they could be better, but you've got to see it. I mean, they were the worst pass defense in the SEC last year.
I'm with you. I got to see the secondary before I'm going to pick the secondary. I think there's potential there, but I got to see it. Offensive line, I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to be fine, but there are questions that you got to find answers to, and nobody thought that there were going to be answers to those questions at the end of spring, so no reason to panic. I will pick the Leo position. I, like you, Rob, think it'll be better in 24 than 23, but I'm going to pick it simply because the sky's the limit. James Pierce, Josephs, Caleb Herring, I mean, those guys are just athletic freaks, and so If they can continue to develop, put on some weight, learn that scheme, get after it with Rodney Garner, I think that could absolutely turn into a strength. And Tennessee needs it to be a strength because obviously if that's a strength, that helps your secondary as well. Let's go to Sam Smith 2233. Does Tennessee have any answer for Vanderbilt's elite left-handed pitching this weekend or Enrique Bradfield Jr. on the base pass? Enrique Bradfield Jr., no. I mean, Tennessee's thrown out one base runner in SEC play. The pitchers don't do any favors with the slow delivery to the plate. You want to keep him off the base pass for sure because if he's on the base pass, he's going to run just like Arkansas ran on Tennessee last weekend as well. Tony loves balance in the order, so I would assume that he's going to try to get some of those right-handed bats in the order as well. Stark, I think, will hit some this weekend. Merritt will get an opportunity to hit some this weekend, obviously. But like I kind of said in the 3-2-1 this week, I just think sooner or later, you got to get your best bats in the order. It doesn't matter if it's lefty, righty, lefty, just who cares, right? Less on matchup and just more on production. I think Tiers and Dreiling should be hitting every single game. That's just my opinion. So we'll see. What's your rotation plans for this weekend or your prediction for the rotation this weekend? Right now, and guys, we're recording this on Wednesday, FYI. Right now, I'll say to stick with the same. I don't see Lindsey or Dolander moving from Friday and Saturday. Right now, and from the comments from Tony Vitello Tuesday night, I would say Beam is going to start on Sunday. But if there is a move, I would say it's probably in that number 3 starter. Chase Burns looked good in relief, 5 in the third innings of 1-run ball. So we will see on that. Let's go down to... Let's see here. All right, this is from Gali. How was Coach Mack perceived as a recruiter? I know he has ties to Memphis. Is he an ace recruiter, Matt Ray?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the recruiting trail, when you look at Jerry over time, he's a relatable guy. He relates to these kids in a lot of ways. He's been a head coach at a smaller level. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's got ties to Memphis. I mean, he recruits well. He's had Tennessee involved in some battles for the past couple of years, and he's won some. I mean, if you look back at Justin Thomas, that was a battle with Auburn, and that was an area of Georgia that Auburn's been highly successful going into and landing guys. And Cadillac Williams wanted Justin Thomas, and Jerry Mack in year 1 was able to beat him out. Now, obviously, that didn't work out long term, but in terms of recruiting, found Dylan Sampson early and got him locked down in that summer, and you could already see the potential that Rob mentioned earlier there. So I think the biggest thing, as far as Jerry Mack as a recruiter, is that one thing that I've heard for the past 3 years that Tennessee's had to continue to overcome is that this is a pass first, air raid type of offense. Even last week, the modern day running back Nathaniel Frazier told me that one of the biggest points of his visit was finding out that Tennessee's threw the ball 52% to running at 48. Like, he was blown away by that because he's hearing on the recruiting front that it's an air raid. So I think that's one thing that Tennessee's had to overcome. And here with 2 years of production, they're doing that. And Jerry Mack has Tennessee sitting in a good spot with a couple of their top targets right now, and Peyton Lewis and Braylon Russell, with Nathaniel Frazier planning an official visit for June, Jarrett Gibson planning to officially visit in June. So the Vols are involved with some guys at the running back position. I think it's just been an uphill battle, and I think he's done a nice job to this point, given what Tennessee was working with in all facets on the recruiting trail that first time around, and then trying to overcome some of those negative recruiting narratives.
We got plenty more mailbag questions to get into here on this edition of the podcast. But first, a listen from our proud sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions.
Your roof, it's the most important protection against nature for your home or your business. That's why I trust the experts at Exterior Home Solutions.
Let's look over at Athlon right now. Back to the recruiting trail. Matt, how many DBs will be in this class?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something that AP and I have talked about a pretty good bit. And I think the number is probably 5 if you look at it and you try to see where Tennessee's going right now. It could be more. It could be one less. I think it's probably 5, though, is where I'm at today. You look, they've already got Marcus Gorey committed. They've got Caleb Beasley committed, and they've added Idris Farouk. They're continuing to recruit Ivy. They're continuing to recruit Boo Carter as a defensive back and a handful of other guys. So I think, there's probably room for 5, but if you got the right combination, maybe even more. We'll see. But that's a good question. I think that's a position that's kind of in flux right now in terms of where that number goes.
2 more questions. When do summer enrollees get to campus? That is June. Also, have you heard anything about Nathan Robinson? How has he looked this spring? Matt, he's a guy that was just held out of spring, a bit banged up, like his potential, but he didn't do an awful lot this spring.
Yeah, no, he didn't do an awful lot this spring, just held out, just to be extra cautious. But no, Nathan Robinson, since going all the way back to last summer, is just what he's done to his frame's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, just an absolute 1,000% commitment to that body transformation.
I mean, he's a guy. I mean, you can see it sometimes, Matt. I know you see it. I mean, you can see it sometimes with kids. Like Caleb Harry's a good example. You'll see some 6'4", 6'5" kid that is, looks like he should be running track. But if you've been around long enough, you're like, man, that kid can carry 40 or 50, 60 more pounds. And that was Nathan Robinson. I remember, I guess, was it the Memorial Day event last year where they had a ton of guys? I can remember seeing him and going, man, that guy is going to be a monster in 2 years.
Yep.
Canada Vol says, in my view, the commitment of Jake Markslinger is one of the most significant recruiting wins ever by Heupel. Only a few programs like Bama, Georgia, Ohio State stack up a blue chipper quarterbacks every year. You all didn't think the Vols could sign a top quarterback in 2024, and neither did I. Do you agree that this is an important step in the elevation of the program, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was ever a question that Tennessee wouldn't sign a good quarterback in 2024. It's just that it's going to be harder.
But coming off Nico, yeah.
Yeah, coming off Nico, it's you just signed the number 1 overall prospect in the class, not just the number 1 quarterback. So, I mean, that makes it harder, in my opinion, and it's going to be harder to carry 3 scholarship quarterbacks on a roster moving forward. But, at the end of the day, I think it's a big win that Tennessee was able to get Jake Markslinger. It speaks to the belief that kids have in what, Joey Halsley and Josh Heupel are doing at the quarterback position. And I think I touched on this maybe on a Rocky Top Rewind or one of the podcasts a few weeks back. As important as Hendon Hooker was to Tennessee's program, and I don't think we can understand fully the importance of that. If Joe Milton comes out and, does what he could potentially do and starts garnering draft stock, then that continues to become easier for Tennessee. But you land a guy like Jake Markslinger, it's big for your recruiting class and an important recruiting class. So, yes, it's definitely an elevation. In my opinion, it definitely shows the direction that Tennessee's trending.
Sparta Vol wants to know, and you're going to have to help me out with this recruit's last name because I've been in baseball mode, but is Okia, what's his name?
I say Okoye.
That sounds better to me. Is he being recruited for offense or defense? And is he definitely a candidate to reclassify into 2023?
Yeah, so he's been recruited as a 2-way athlete. And that's something that Tennessee will figure out over time, that other schools will figure out over time if he comes to campus. He's very dynamic. He's extremely long. Just naturally explosive athlete. So he can do a lot of different things for you. So it's a guy that being overseas in London, you're not going to have a chance to really see a lot of things from him. How can he bend? How can he do certain different things? I think that's something that'll be figured out over time. He is a candidate. He has the credits in place to be a 23. So we'll see what happens there as he continues his official visit slate this month with several schools, out west still on deck.
I think we have one more strictly recruiting question. Then we got some more football questions we'll get into. Garantano Survivor. Gosh, MVP of names right there.
I wish AP was here so I could hear that little chuckle.
That little chuckle. Is there still a chance Ron Wingo ends up in this class, or does the focus now shift solely to Mike Matthews?
Yeah, no, I would not hit the panic button on Ron Wingo right now. It's still, as I alluded to, probably in the first week that I came on at Volquest, and I had a little note that Ron Wingo was planning to come back out for an unofficial visit there in January, that Tennessee, from what I'd gathered and covered him leading in, was in a good spot, but there were going to be twists and turns, and that's the case. He's one of the top receivers in the country, and there's going to be twists and turns, but Tennessee is still deep in this and still, in my opinion, the team to beat today. Georgia and others are swinging hard, and that was always going to be the case. As far as Mike Matthews, the attention that both of those guys are getting, it's not one or the other. It's Tennessee wants both of those guys. Yeah. So they're both getting a lot of attention. Two guys that have a case to be the number one receiver in the class, and two guys that, see their potential fit in this offense, and both that are high on Tennessee. I think Mike Matthews could be, and I've said this is probably the 7th or 8th time now that I've said this, I think Mike Matthews could be the number one player in the class. I understand how those projections are done based on NFL draft projections, and if you're smart and you're doing those the correct way, you're putting a quarterback up there, and Dylan Raiola is a really, really good quarterback, so it's easy to see why that is what it is. But as far as a two-way player, Mike Matthews is special. But Tennessee's in a good spot with both of those guys, and they're very much in it for Ryan Wingo. I talked to him earlier in the week, and he will be here. He plans to be back out here at some point for an official visit before making a decision. I just don't think that one's anywhere close to being over right now based on what I've gathered.
One of my buddies was texting me the other day, and he was asking about Ryan Wingo, and was like, Tennessee was leading for him in the fall. Did they drop the ball there? And kind of my response was, well, back in the fall, there's a long way to go in recruiting. And also, it's, you're battling the back-to-back national champion right now. I don't care how blah their offense looks, right? It's still going to be a challenge, and you're going to lose guys to Georgia, Alabama, LSU, some of the Ohio State, because, Tennessee's trying to get in that area code right now and be, every prospect-type contenders of those guys. But, a prospect that's wanting to look at Georgia right now, that's still no surprise.
And never, ever forget, you're talking about 16 and 17-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
Never forget.
Yeah. And going back, even to last cycle, when you talk about those kids, David Hobbs and Arion Carter, Tennessee went and beat out Georgia and others for David Hobbs, and beat out Alabama for Arion Carter. When you're talking about the defensive side of the football. So it's like, I've seen kind of the chatter on the Generals quarter of, hey, why is a receiver looking at Georgia? Well, if you're a Georgia fan looking at the opposite side, why is David Hobbs looking at Tennessee, given, what their defense has been and where the Vols have been? So, it's half a dozen one way and half a dozen the other way. But these kids are being sold on, this is the direction we want to go, and you're the guy that can get us there. And it's 16 to 17-year-old kids, and they've got to try, like Rob said, you got to factor in so many different things with what these kids are looking at. And they have guys like that have all the opportunity in the world ahead of them.
Matt, you'll be happy to know that my mother uses that same phrase in order to say it's all the same.
Oh, well, yeah. Six
of one and half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
All right. Joe Thunder, Rob, he says, I know it's early, but who do you think represents Tennessee at Media Days this year?
Oh, let's see. Joe Milton, for sure. That's a given.
Cooper Mays.
Yeah. Also, pencil him in. So then we need a defensive guy.
Aaron Beasley?
Aaron Beasley, strong possibility. I don't think you would take Peely, do you? I don't think you would take a transfer.
No. Maybe Jalen McCullough.
You're not taking McCullough.
I don't know, man.
With the off the field incident last year, you're not taking him.
Yeah,
that's true.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
And probably
maybe Amari Thomas.
Yeah, that's a good. I bet Big O. I would go with Big O because he's really good with the media.
Yeah.
He's gregarious. Could he can be funny. He can be interesting. I could definitely. I would go with Amari for the defensive guy.
Yeah,
and
didn't think about. I think
Milton and Cooper are slam dunks.
Yeah. The only thing with Milton is, and he's going to be Tennessee's starting quarterback, but I do remember before there was an official announcement made, year one, he didn't take Milton or Hooker or any quarterback to SEC Media Days. But I would agree. Milton's the leader of this team for sure, so he will be there. Let's see here. Rob Lewis, Roba22 says, and I know you didn't get to see a whole lot of practice, and all of us that went to every practice that was open, we didn't get to see a lot, right? It's routes on air, but he said in the short little time you got to see practice this spring, has Joe Milton's touch on the ball looked any different? Any noticeable improvements in the past? Shown any overall accuracy improvements in drills? I thought he looked fine in the orange and white game. There was a throw or two he'd like to have back, but in practice, there was not a lot of balls hitting the ground except for maybe, day 3 and they were doing red zone passing. He looked great throwing it down the field in routes on air with no defense. It's just hard to pick up on anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. The routes on air. I didn't notice a lot of, just off-target throws. I mean, like ones where, he's in the past and he's had some that just for like, high outside fastballs, that got away and hit, went to the backstop. And I didn't notice probably any of those from him this spring. But I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where people are raving about the touch Joe Milton has on the football. I mean, let's be honest.
Heavy Metal Vol says, outside of recruiting, what areas of the football team are still the biggest areas of concern? Maybe outside observers see as things that need to be improved on or justified. It can be anything. It can be not just the players or position groups, but it can be coaching philosophy. It can be handling the media. Anything maybe jump out that from a national perspective, Tennessee still has work to do in this area?
I would say not at all. I mean, I would say from the infrastructure standpoint, Tennessee's been at the mountaintop for years. It's been the on-the-field product that has lagged behind. I mean, if you're over there in that building and see what the support and the resources that program they don't lack for anything. I mean, zip, nada. I mean, you're talking about facilities or academic support or nutrition. The media setup. I mean, they have the SEC network could broadcast a studio show from Tennessee's own studio.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing that from the behind the scenes stuff that is at all lacking, in my opinion.
And then from the football stuff, I mean, sure, you say, well, the defense needs to continue to take a step. It took a step last year and needs to get better. But, from the availability standpoint, Pruitt let us see 2 practices a week, just the 20 minutes and everything, but we got to go on like Tuesdays or Wednesdays or whatever. Heupel doesn't allow that, but we get to see all of spring. We get to see all of fall camp. We get players and tons of assistants throughout the season. So that's different from the Jeremy Pruitt regime. And I think that's good.
I think that's also a reflection of just how comfortable the head coach is in his own skin. I mean, a lot of coaches, don't want their assistants talking because they don't want anything out there that's off message. That like if Mike Eckler coached for Nick Saban, he would never be in front of a microphone again.
Nope.
Even though I think the fart in the skillet comment could not be more harmless or innocent. But a guy like Saban just wouldn't want that out there. So I think that the fact that Coach Heupel has no hangups about freshmen talking. I mean, we're not just talking about. I mean, we're talking about early enrollees. I mean, guys that have been here for 6-8 weeks. Heupel doesn't care to roll those kids out and put them in front of a podium. And I think that stuff is great. And I think that is like I said, just a real reflection of how comfortable in his own skin and golly, Josh could not be more different than Butch Jones in that regard. I mean, he's not worried about perception. He's very genuine, and I think that comes across in the things you're talking about, Eric. How he's fine with his assistants talking, run a freshman out there, let a quarterback talk, even if there's a position battle going on. Just that stuff, I think, is a breath of fresh air.
And again, like credit to Bill Martin, Tennessee and the coaching staff and Josh Heupel for allowing that. They do a great job of putting the freshmen in front of us in spring and in fall camp, because for the most part, we're not going to talk to freshmen during their freshman year because a lot of those guys won't play.
Yeah.
But, they get us in there so we can write stories and everything. And at the end of the day, we, the beat reporters, are the gateway between you, the fans, and the program. The more access we get, the more stories and information we can, put out there and more content to consume. And so it's really, really good.
And let's be real, Eric. I mean, there's 85 scholarship kids. I mean, there's a lot of times where there are going to be some guys that coaches don't want to put in front of the media.
Yeah.
I mean, when's the last? How many years did Jeremy Banks go without doing an interview?
I mean, maybe his freshman or sophomore year he did, but not the last 2 years.
and I think that I don't know really what my point is. I don't think that Heupel is bringing anybody in that they're afraid to run out and put in front of a microphone and a bunch of cameras.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. Kind of on that note, though, Mohawk Vol 9 says, have teams with strict player media availabilities like the Pruitt era here at Tennessee changed due to NIL? I don't think I have an answer to that, but he goes on, do you think players would be available for Vol Club Confidential if he were still coaching? The answer to that is absolutely yes.
They would have
because,
to be.
I mean, at the end of the day, coaching staff has no say on that, right? I mean, that is an NIL opportunity to go on the Vol Club Confidential or another program like that. Maybe the Tuesday night show,
or the locker room with Packer and AP.
Locker room is a good one. Tennessee Prime is, yeah.
A coach could say no, you can't go, but what's that going to do to you in recruiting when they can do it? When the Georgia kids can go and the Alabama kids can go, but the Tennessee kids can't. So yeah, that's a no-brainer. I mean, a coach could say no, but they'd be cutting off their nose to spite their face. Did your mom say that? Did your mom say that, EC?
She did. She did indeed. We got two mama sayings here on the podcast today. All right, let's get to two more. We'll do baseball here first. This is from Hoover Vol. Do you think Dolander in this upcoming draft and Burns in next year's draft are still first-round picks? Really have been surprised with the regression from both this year with the tools that they have. Yeah, Dolander's throwing well right now, but again, he's not over that hump. He's not, again, I say this every single week, he's not getting far enough in games, and a lot of that has to do with defense and high pitch count and all that. But Dolander absolutely will be a first-round pick this summer. Absolutely. Arguably, if not for Paul Skeens, he's one of the most impressive pitching prospects like in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, he's that good. So he'll be a first-rounder. And with what Chase Burns possesses, I understand he doesn't have a good third pitch, but as time goes on, he'll pick one up, hopefully. He doesn't have a lot of confidence in his changeup. He's got a good slider when it doesn't hang. He's got a fastball that can touch triple digits. I still think Chase Burns right now will be a first-round pick. I know it's been tough sledding for him this season so far, but if he rebounds, just going off potential, right? And I would say that those two guys are for sure going to be first-round picks. Let's go to J-Vols. Rob, would you agree with that, by the way?
I'm going to leave that all to you, EC. They
all right.
100, number 1 and number 2 overall.
There you go. All right, last one here. Let's go to J-Vols 95. What does the depth chart look like at Nickelback? Curious if any younger guys are going to get reps there since our main two guys, McDonald and Walker, are seniors. How would an injury to McDonald affect the secondary? If it's Walker shifting down from safety, who goes off the bench to play safety, all that type of stuff. It's a good question, and I think we'll learn more about this over fall camp and all that, Rob. But for right now, I would have Wesley Walker as being a starting safety. If something happened to Tamarion McDonald, I think Walker would go down and play star. And then I would think either Jordan Thomas or Andre Turrentine would go in and play safety. My bet right now would be Jordan Thomas. We'll see. Another guy outside of McDonald and Walker who can play star would be Jordan Thomas. Those guys cross-train all the time. Danico Slaughter's a guy that can play all three positions in the secondary, so if push came to shove and you absolutely needed something there, Slaughter could slide over.
Danico started the first game of his college career at nickel. Isn't that crazy to think about?
It's wild. And then didn't see the field for 2 years, and then made like a 2-play appearance at LSU this year, and then starts games at safety, and then moves to cornerback. It's like, who is this guy? So that's kind of how I would answer that right now. But again, Rob, they cross-train so much. They have options. But I would say at star, the three guys would be McDonald, Wesley Walker, Jordan Thomas.
See, even those freshman DBs down the road that played nickel. I mean, I know Matthews is probably a corner all the way, but Conyer.
I think maybe a John Slaughter potentially could be. I think Matthews is a corner. I think Ricky Gibson's a corner. Maybe Conyer. I think John Slaughter could potentially be a guy. He's not afraid to hit anybody, and he can play in the box. He can play out of the box. So, maybe Matt and Austin would have more on that. But I would say John Slaughter more than anybody else in that freshman class could maybe turn into a star.
I like those freshman DBs.
I do too. Ricky Gibson was the guy nobody was talking about. He had a really good spring. Jordan Matthews has the highest ceiling. Christian Conyer made the tip pass, interception from Cam Miller, and he's a guy that's underrated. So for sure, I would agree with that. All right. Hey, this has been a fun edition of the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. We heard from, Matt Ray, tons of recruiting. Rob Lewis here helping me with football and basketball, everything else. We heard from Brent Hobbs from Cincinnati as the NCAA hearing continues with Tennessee and its former head coach. And always thank you for sending in those questions. Big thanks to Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. Give them a day for a free estimate. That is at 865-524-5888. Stay tuned to Volquest.com for the rest of the week for coverage on everything Tennessee. For Rob Lewis, Brent Hobbs, Matt Ray, I am Eric Kane. A big thank you guys for listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.